Hi everyone, I'm Les,
And I'm Ashley.
and you're listening to Anthropotamus, where we explore some of your favorite anthropology topics.
Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Anthropotamus. This book discussion, we will be discussing Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar and her husband Derek. Um, oh man, so much to say about this. This is probably one of our favorite books we've read. And this book is any cultural anthropologist out there would probably just love it.
Yeah,
And yep.
absolutely.
So um so we were actually supposed to do this book last month, but life kind of took control and we lost track of everything. So we're doing it now. But because we were supposed to do it last month, Les actually reread it. It was so good. He wanted to make sure to reread it. I did not, unfortunately, but I still remember a lot because that's how good it was. But now here we are, finally discussing it.
Yeah, so it's not an incredibly long book. I'll just start by saying that. It's not an incredibly long book, but in the time that they have, like so much is said, and um, I probably reread it largely because it resonated with my thoughts on religion a lot. It does, I'm not religious. I'm just gonna be upfront with that. Um, my feelings on religion are complicated at best, and at worst they can be downright hostile. Uh, but the way that Jill Duggar discusses her life and her struggles and uh, just in general the amount of abuse and cultishness in this book, it makes you relook at what you already believe and reassess, I guess is what I'm trying to say. uh, but to sum it up a little bit, I enjoyed it a lot, so much that I read it twice in the space of 2 months.
So, for those who don't know, the Duggar family had their own TV show. I don't even know when their first show. Actually, their first show wasn't even a show. I think it was a short documentary. Um, I want to say it came out in the 90s or early 2000s. Um, and honestly, uh, I mean, I'm not Christian at the time. I guess I was. Um, but when I watched the show, honestly, even as a young girl, I was impressed with the family. Actually, I think you can still find it on YouTube. But I mean, it was such a large family and they worked so well together as a team. And it was so impressive. And you see these children helping, take care of each other and helping with the groceries. The one scene that stuck with me, you got like this 8-year-old little girl carrying like 20 pounds of pickles into the house as they're moving groceries in. I mean, I have a hard time getting my 1 9-year-old to take a shower, let alone, having a whole household of children. I think at the time when the show came out, they had like 14 kids. It was, I mean, it was something. It was extremely impressive, and then they're building their own house. So when they first came out, all this right, I don't know if they call it what right wing extremist Christian beliefs. I don't even know if I would call that right wing. It's just extremist beliefs. Um,
Well, it
I
was
mean, it
cold.
wasn't, it was a cult. It's
Yeah,
basically a cult. But that hadn't come to light yet.
yeah.
Um, and as the years went on and they had multiple shows and then the controversy with the oldest brother, um, yeah, when she came out with this book and I saw on Twitter everybody discussing it and how great it was for her to come out with this stuff, I had to read it. I had to know what everyone was talking about.
Growing up, I had an uncle in my family who had married into a fundamentalist Christian group. I don't believe it was the same one. It might have been. I don't know for sure. I tried to reach out to them after reading this book, but well, they didn't want to talk. I just put it that way. They didn't want to talk. I do know that one of the children from this family, uh, and I shouldn't say his name, so I'm not going to, but one of the children from that part of the family uh, was trying to get out a number of years ago, and at some point after he was an adult, and I mean he's already 19, 20 at this point, he was forcibly stripped of all of his electronics, and he just went dark on the internet, and I haven't heard from him since. Um, the the cultishness in this group is frankly scary, and it makes me think about how indoctrination works, and I'd like to contrast that against what we call culture, and how well, compare and contrast, I suppose, because it's very similar to a culture, except that it's very constructed and insular, in that you know others' opinions are labeled evil. You can't have somebody else's ideas or opinions involved, otherwise it doesn't really work, does it? And then when you're looking at regular culture, everybody involved, everybody in your life is building upon it and showing you what things are like and how to do certain things and what is right and what is wrong, right? But we can take it even further and look at the way that different governments use the same concept, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to point out the specific governments because, again, I don't want to be a hot button on that one. But there are certain dictatorships in the world that, and I mean, I guess dictatorships in general do this, but they entirely cut off their people from the outside world as much as possible. Obviously, in the current state of affairs that the world's in, it's much more difficult to limit access to the internet and so on. But it's that same mentality. Everything relies on that one person in the center, right? That one person who controls all of it and who is essentially deified. And I guess that's what I wanted to say. Jill Duggar's father raised himself up on a pedestal, which, I mean, it. If anybody out there is religious and takes issue with the what I'm about to say, I apologize in advance. But the truth is, it seems like he created himself as a false idol for his family and for the people that followed his teaching in the world through his show, right? His
Or false
ministry.
prophet, how it's probably used prophet.
Well, yeah, I mean, prophet might be the right word, but I think that prophet tends to like you're speaking for God, and I don't think he ever claimed to be a prophet, but
He never claimed to be a prophet, but it was always, oh, I'm doing God's work. God has put us in this situation so I could spread the message.
yeah, I mean, either way, he definitely made himself the center of attention and glorified himself through God, using God as a tool to make himself more. And, and Jill Duggar brings up several examples of that in her book as well. Like when he was bragging about the girl with the tattoos who said she changed her life because of his show and his teachings and all this other stuff.
Hmm. Um, I just have to say, her husband, Jill's husband,
Right.
Derek, right,
Yeah.
is that man is a freaking angel to have put up with this, her family the way he did,
Oh my
and the
God.
patience he had for her family and the support he gave her. He never you later find out he never really believed like
Of course
in
not. Yeah.
their the way they believed, but he never said anything until she was ready to realize, hey, this stuff isn't wrong, and and he was always there to support her. Even like I thought it was strange this like the whole time when she decided she wanted to wear pants and started having a drink here and there. He's like, yeah, it's totally fine, and he just never said anything until she decided to realize, I think I'm ready to transition out of this belief system I grew
Yeah.
up in. Um, I just amazing in the and him, and I really think that the two of them going traveling outside the country without her family, like I'm not really a supporter of missionary work, but I think for her being able to go out of the country and do that missionary work without the influence of her family, I think had a huge impact on how she perceived the world and was able to analyze what, her own faith without her father's interference. Um, and she wouldn't have done that, I don't think, without him.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that I so I don't even know if he understood when what he was getting into. I don't think he actually understood what he was getting into when he first started courting Jill. I don't think he could have, like, realistically. How could you walk into, a family like that, and with the total control that Jim Bob Duggar, by the way, his name is Jim Bob. Um, if you didn't know that, now you know.
I mean, okay, to be fair though, James Robert is a very lovely name. Jim
James
Bob.
Robert, James Robert,
But
but he
Jim
went by
Bob.
Jim Bob. But he went by Jim Bob. So it's like, oh man, that is as country as it gets, my friend. And I've got ties to family back in Missouri. Not that I reach out, not that we talk much, but I've got ties to family back in Missouri. I don't think I've ever met anybody named Jim Bob in person. I've got ties to family who live up in the hills. Like, I'm talking mountain people here, and it's like, and I love them to death, but none of them are named Jim Bob. There were a few of them who have some interesting names, and I'm not going to bring them up here because that would just, I mean, while it would prove my point, I really don't want to bring them into this. Um, yeah, no, it's that's one hell of a name. But I got off track. What was I saying?
I don't know. I
Freaking.
got distracted with Jim Bob.
Um, I think I was talking about how Derek couldn't have understood what he was getting into. Either way, uh, he handled it very well, and like you said,
Mhm.
without him, I don't know that Jill would have ever pulled away from her family like that, or not pulled away, but seen, beyond her family. There was
Mhm.
a wall of silence, and a shield to the a shield from the outside world put in place so that they couldn't see what was happening.
Um, like her when I, getting through this book, I'm like, her father is basically a narcissist. Um, and
Absolutely.
so manipulative. And, I was very impressed by, her coming to this realization, but at the same time, still being like, I love my parents. I still want them in my life. I just want them to understand, this is my faith, and I'm not going to blindly follow them anymore. And the fact that she still works so hard to keep that relationship with them, and even, going through therapy and whatnot. Um, I found that very impressive because I'm the type of person, if you're a ginormous a-hole, whether you're not your family, I'm just not going to keep you in my life.
See, I understand that impulse, but I also understand where Jill's coming from, and I say that because uh, there are a lot of things that people do, and a lot of mistakes that people make, and I've had family who have made some enormous mistakes time and time and time again. And while I have had to remove certain, individuals from my life, there's always the want to keep them there. I have a cousin in particular who, I don't think I will ever see him as a functioning member of society, or anything in close to that regard. just because of everything that he's done and everything that he lives for now. And I haven't talked to him in close to 7 years, but I still wish that I could have had him in my life because growing up, he was the closest thing I had to an older brother. So I can understand why you would want to keep somebody in your life, even with all of that, abuse.
I get that, but this isn't just, of somebody made a mistake. We all make mistakes. We all screw up. This is somebody who was trying to completely control her entire life, not even her life, but her husband's life and her children's lives, and even to the point where it was controlling their financial situation. It wasn't getting, you know, all
Yeah,
that money that was supposed to go to them. He took it and then, well, was like, oh, but I got you this stuff instead. But I'm like, that doesn't equivalent to, how much you were supposed to be giving her. They were basically poor
yeah,
because of her father. And then, someone who's going to get upset and mad at you because you decided to wear pants, like that's not somebody who makes a mistake. That is someone who needs to just, I think, just, yeah.
yeah. No, and let's talk about the ethics of some of that right there. Just starting with his total financial control over everybody in his family. And right there, we can start looking at where the cultishness really comes in. How none of them really have possessions or anything like that at all. It's, you know, the family buys everything, and
Hmm.
you can't really have anything to, that is, substance, nothing but the family matters. So, in I
Well,
think in his mind, it's like, well, I'm providing for you everything that you need, and part of everything that you need is, that entertainment aspect of life and so on. And so he provides that through more family and so in keeping people busy, stuff like that. I don't think he ever actually believed he was doing anything wrong by keeping all of that money.
I don't know if I want to say that because if I remember correctly, he was putting on the taxes that supposedly he was giving them this money, and then they were supposed to end up paying all these taxes that they didn't know they were supposed to be paying. He screwed them over.
Oh, for sure.
And then he made up
Absolutely.
excuses for it. Like, you screwed your children over. Not only were you not giving them money, but you're causing them to have to pay money that they didn't have. And then he was going and giving all these random families places to live, acting like he's some saint, and so
Yep.
that he can look good in his community. So I don't.
And see, I can't speak to what is actually in his mind, but it seems to me like his children weren't real people to him. At least not until later in his life, but he was treating them like they were just extensions of himself. And
But
so
I think,
as
but I
long as he
think
could.
that's how he saw it because, right? It was always supposed to be the family always follows the father figure, even as they become adults.
Which, by the way, is ridiculous, and I'm just gonna say it loud and proud. Any of you out there who are in this kind of relationship, get out. Just,
Yeah,
just,
if you're an adult
just
who's
get
still
out.
blindly following your parents and as like the Duggars, then that's not good. I
Yeah,
mean, I hate to pass
total
judgment,
financial
but there
domination
there
is not
comes to a point
okay.
where it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
somebody getting
So
mad at you for wearing pants is not okay.
no, it that is beyond the pale. And when you man. So anyway, let's get back on track here.
And
Um,
I mean, and what's as interesting is, and I remember reading about whatever the guy's name is that the whatever the guy's name is that was the head of their sect, what is it, independent
the
fundamentalist Baptist or
the
whatever.
the
I don't know what the
IBF.
guy's name was, but um he eventually I think got caught for like sexual assault of
Yeah.
young girls, and then he would all the girls were expected to have the same hair, their hair the
Yep.
same way and their clothes the same way, and he always picked the same looking girls to work for him and then sexually assault them. It's like, this is happening and you're still following this man who preached that you got to have tons of children, but I don't think he even had his own children. So he wasn't even following his own like preaching.
Yep. She actually talks about that. Jill actually says that it seemed like he was the only one who was above the rules.
Hmm.
He preached this, but things were different when it came to him. Uh, yeah, and no, the crazy thing is, um, she mentioned it, and I don't know if well, she mentioned that one of her sisters was uh, one of his, his girls, right? That was their fun nickname for it. She was one of so and so's girls. I can't remember his name either. Um, but when you find out later, and they don't actually talk about whether or not anything happened with her, I guess that's her story to tell if it did. But it's when you find out later that he was sexually assaulting all of these girls, it really puts things into perspective how the power that these people wield through this dogma of theirs. It's it's kind of insane.
I was just looking at the set that I looked. I just wanted to clarify. So they are part of the Independent Fundamentalist Baptist, but they are also a part of the Institute of Basic Life Principles, which
Yeah,
is
the
what
IBLP.
IBLP says. I was trying to find what IBLP stood for, and I couldn't find it, but
Uh,
now it's here. Institute of Basic Life Principles, which I'm assuming is it like a subsect of the Independent Fundamentalists?
so I think that was is like his specific thing that he found it, and I really wish I could. We should probably look up his name if we can, but I think he specifically founded that the IBLP to help the independent fundamentalist Baptists who didn't think that those churches were strict enough,
Hmm.
and he essentially built his own little cult and spread it around the world. Like he brought in people from, oh gosh, I want to say the Ukraine, but I might be wrong about that. Um,
Okay, the
like
founder is Bill Gothard. Gothard?
Bill Gothard, yes, yeah, that was his name, Bill Gothard, and yeah, I don't know. That's he built a cult, and it's crazy because you hear all these. Like I grew up hearing stories about um, people building cults back in the '60s and '70s,
Hmm. And I
and
mean,
the
they
fact
still
that
exist.
yeah, the fact that these things still happen, still exist, is insane. And
I
this one
think
was
part
so
of it,
public.
yeah, especially after the Duggar show came out.
Yeah, this one was huge. It was everybody was seeing this.
Um, I think though it's, and I'm sure there's like a cultural anthropologist out there who studies cults. Actually, we need to find one. That, I think the thing with cults is it makes people want to feel like they belong to something and that they have a purpose. So, I mean, I get like why people would initially be attracted to maybe certain groups, but I mean, it comes to the point where it's like, hey, red flags.
So, it, in a lot of the media, okay, let me take a new tact on this. Um, I think a lot of people out there watch like shorts, like on TikTok and
Hmm.
YouTube and places like that, right? Every once in a while, I'll go on there, and it's a huge time waster. By the way, if
Oh
you can
God, it
stop,
is.
try. But like shorts are the worst thing to happen to media because they're so addictive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so every once in a while, if I'm on there and I'm scrolling through, I'll get some religious person who's preaching about their lifestyle and their beliefs and whatnot. Right, and I usually just say don't recommend this because I'm not interested. Right, that's not my business. I don't really care that much. But on occasion, I'll get somebody who like talks about how if life isn't like I had one recently. The guy was saying if life isn't going your way, don't blame God. You're just not praying hard enough, or you're not believing enough, or you're not relying on God enough. And I'm like, okay, so hold on a second. We literally just did an episode on somebody who was talking about how people who believe will frame their lives through the lens of God gives you everything and everything, all credit to God and all this other stuff, right? That third dimension of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't apply if bad things are happening. Yeah, no, that's not God's fault, right? That's because you aren't being, somewhere in your life. I don't know, don't know where it is. You have to figure that out for yourself. But somewhere in your life, you're not believing enough. You're not trusting in God enough. So, that's why that's happening.
My issue with people always saying, "Oh, pray, pray." It's like God didn't give you the ability to act for you to sit there and pray.
Yep.
Whether or not you're
Yeah.
religious, it's at the end of the day, your actions have consequences.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we are totally getting off the book.
I see. I know that we're getting off the book, but I think this. I do
Yeah.
think that this is very applicable to the book. I mean, it's this whole book is a discussion of her faith, and I guess the reason that I kind of wanted to share that viewpoint is because I am amazed, like truly amazed, that she still has faith in any god, much less the one that she was raised on, considering what she's been through and what she's learned.
I don't think it's unusual for us to have faith because once you start actually learning, like Christianity, depending on the sect you're studying, or when you get out of those fundamentalist group, it's a very different teaching, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't think it's unusual that she still believes in God.
Maybe it's not unusual, but and that I guess shows the power of that idealism. But it's baffling to me. Then again, I do have a very different background when it comes to religion, right? So
Yeah. I,
it's like I mentioned that my viewpoints on religion are complex. So it has a place in the world. I'm not gonna say that it doesn't. It does have a place in the world. It's just not in my life. So there's that.
yeah. Um, I found it very interesting that section when they're discussing her brother when he got caught. That was that what I can't remember the name of the website, and him
Yeah.
cheating on his wife, and then I don't know whatever else the authorities were looking into his computers. I don't even remember all the details, but how their father brought. Oh, and then he got caught with the whole you know touching girls when he was younger. Stories came out and how the father brought everyone together. How are we gonna protect your brother and cover up all the things he did? It's your responsibility to help him cover all this up. And it's like, seriously?
Uh huh.
How are you gonna bring them in to this like that? How are
So
you so desperate to cover up his mistakes? Honestly, I couldn't believe he brought. I guess I could believe he brought his whole family like that.
without making any accusations here, all I want to point out is considering the teachings that he believes in and what he taught his wife and daughters and his children, and the fact that despite the teachings against going and looking at porn and all these other things that his son was accused of, um, he one of the specific beliefs that he repeat that was repeated over and over in the book was that women or moving in the wrong way can give men bad thoughts. And that is on whoever is doing the movement. That blame falls on that person, not the person thinking these thoughts, not the anything else like that, but the person who was walking around wearing pants, for example, or you know, dancing, as another example. Um, the blame falls on that person, not any individual who's actually thinking these things. So, I wonder if this father figure, Jim Bob, um, you know, I wonder if he didn't have such an extreme reaction to the outside world based on his own thoughts. And maybe that's one of the reasons he held so strict to his core beliefs is because of that. And I think that the fact that his son is doing these and he reacted so strongly against that is very telling on what he believes is right and wrong. I don't think he believes that his son was at fault for his own actions.
Well, there was, um, I mean, they did. I think when he was a teenager, and he did. I can't remember what he did. I think he was just sexually assaulting young girls.
His sisters.
I think it was also a cousin too, or it was like a sister and a cousin, or I don't remember.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. I know that
either
he
way,
had
he
two of
was
his
touching
sisters
girls
for sure.
inappropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they actually sent him away
Mm-hmm.
to go work with another. I don't know. They sent him away so he can go have counseling with some other church member, and I don't know, whatever they were doing. And I think to them, they were giving their son the help he needed, when in reality, they probably should have got him some actual professional help, which they probably don't believe in because it's not within their religious group. So I think that the initially when he was young, the intent was there to help him so that this wouldn't continue on later in life, but it was the wrong steps to take. At least
Yeah,
I
and
believe. Obviously, it was a wrong. I don't want to say at least that's what I believe, but obviously, it was not the correct steps to take because later on in life, he had a lot of issues.
yeah. So clearly they weren't able to help him. I forget his name too. He's
Oh
not
God,
the
I don't.
main character, so there's that. Um, he's a central figure in the book because of his actions and all the harm that caused. But he's yeah, I don't know. He's not somebody that should be glorified. That's for sure.
Mm-mm.
His
I really feel in a way like he did a lot of bad things, but I almost feel
oh
like in a way I feel bad for him because I feel like he actually really does need like mental health because of his upbringing and like all the perverted
oh for sure,
stuff he's gone
absolutely.
through, but he's just not getting that help. And
And
his, yeah.
I don't know if I'm gonna say this right, and I'm hopefully it doesn't sound horrible, but I think his actions in a way are similar to Jill stepping away from their own family, or no, her own beliefs. In a way, he's trying to rebel against what he's been taught is true by doing whatever he's doing. And there's also the aspect of social taboos being enticing as well. So anything that he's taught is specifically wrong is going to be innately more desirable because of his natural curiosity. And he's got a very sick mind because he wasn't exposed to the other parts of life, if that makes sense. Like the the kids all being homeschooled, only being exposed to each other and maybe some other people from these church groups. It's you're not properly socialized. You don't get to learn what is right and wrong from the entirety of society. Just the few people who are nearby you, and they can't see everything. The people who are super close to you never see everything. You have to be exposed to those outside sources who can tell you, hey, that's kind of messed up, dude.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna close this window because a lot of cars are driving by.
No worries.
I don't want to say I completely, yes, I do think that the fact that he was so isolated and all these things probably made it seem more tempting to him. But at the same time, his other brothers weren't doing those things. Why just him? I think there's a lot
That's fair.
more maybe going on with him mentally. And I
That's
found
fair.
it, I mean, there was, even like when he was younger, what they had that whole boys group where they were like protests against like pornography or something.
Yep.
It's like, why are you so focused on protesting pornography? Like,
It was an
uh,
excuse for them to talk about
yeah,
pornography.
yeah. So I think he just had issues from a young age, and it just wasn't properly handled. And there's a lot more going on there than isolation.
Okay, so this is off topic, but I just want to talk about just one little thing here. Why was part of their protest eating a pickle?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. What? Why?
Um,
Why was? Yeah. If it doesn't stop, we're gonna eat a pickle at every meeting. How is that a protest?
I think it
I
was
don't-
just a dumb thing that kids made up. They were
yeah.
young kids. I think it was just a
Yeah.
dumb kid thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that
No,
was
I,
really
I
cool.
agree with you. I was like, maybe I'm just defending pickles here because I like them so much, but it's like, what?
I think it was just a kid thing. Kids like
Okay.
to have their own thing. Yeah, that was the pickle thing
Such
was
a
weird, but yeah.
sacrifice. Such a sacrifice. You're eating pickles. Oh my gosh. So I was a little unclear about I what was this the like what were those meetings when that abuse happened? Because she introduced the abuse that happened to her, but on the hand at the hands of her brother, shortly after those meetings after she started joining them. So I was a little bit confused about whether or not that happened then or if it
Well,
was a
did it?
different incident.
I'm not sure because they brought up those that little club at the beginning of the book, right? But then they don't start talking about um all the things he did till later on in the book. So I don't know. Maybe he started recognizing his attraction or his like want or need or desire to look at pornography and stuff and created that club and then maybe eventually down the road, he started
See,
assaulting. No, I don't know.
yeah, see, I think that like you're absolutely right when you say there's something wrong with with his mind, um, and maybe it's maybe I'm wrong or something, but I think that he was his mental growth was stunted. Like he's in the mindscape of a child, pretty much throughout his life. Every interaction that we read about in this book, his responses to things. That's what I would expect from maybe a 7-year old. Right? He shows no emotional or mental growth at all. But I mean,
And
granted,
it's
this isn't
always,
from
let's
his
go back to
perspective,
run to
so
daddy so he could help me.
exactly.
But I kind of feel like that's what his dad wants, right?
Of
To be in
course,
charge of their lives like that.
yeah, yep. He doesn't have any personal culpability or responsibility because he's just doing what Daddy taught him.
Mm. You brought up the dancing earlier
Uh-huh.
briefly. Um, Something I thought was, she discusses that, they weren't really allowed to listen to music and dance. They were only allowed to listen to certain music and dance a certain way, and they were told, no, you can't wiggle your butts and stuff like that because it's provocative. Um, but I did like that she at least told both the girls and boys not to do that. It wasn't just the girls don't behave inappropriately. It was boys and girls don't do this. I was like, I at least had to give her credit
Yeah,
for that. It
yeah,
wasn't
that's
just the
true.
girls.
And I do think that her mother was a lot more reasonable in her beliefs than their father,
Oh yeah.
but it's also still well, she bears a lot of responsibility for what happened to their children as well.
hmm I
I
think
mean,
that might have been because she she didn't grow up within the cult. She
yeah,
married into it.
yeah, she
So,
she was definitely indoctrinated.
hmm
Remember I think there was a part where Jim Bob was talking to Jill about the nose piercing or the
Oh,
pants or whichever it was, and says, "Well, your mom has this book about how dressing inappropriately or moving inappropriately can give men bad thoughts. You should give that a read."
oh God.
It's like, okay,
Then don't look.
I'm just saying. All I'm saying is, I don't care what you think. Thoughts aren't a crime. What I care about is your actions. If you act
Mm-hmm.
inappropriately, and not to be, that guy, but like you do something wrong, sometimes you deserve to get put in your place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, her dad is something. I'm, yeah, I don't even know what to say anymore. Her dad is just,
Yeah, well, he's. I mean, we can count the different labels we've given. He's a narcissist. He's a cult
mm,
leader. Um, he's an advocate for a pedophile.
mm.
Because his son is a pedophile. What else? Um,
And I am, and I mean, this book isn't about her brother, it's about her,
uh,
but I, I, I don't know, like, I don't know how his wife stayed with him. I'm not even sure if is she still with him? Let me, um, I'm trying to Google if he's still with him. Is Josh Duggar still married? Yeah. Oh, they are still married. Oh, it's okay. So according to Yahoo, this came out in September. Anna and Josh are still married as he continues his prison sentence. However, a source told In Touch that Anna had been questioning their future. She took her wedding vows seriously and she wants to stand by her man and all that, but the reality of her situation is very difficult. Dear Anna,
yeah,
please run. Please run far, far away from your husband.
and
Oh, it doesn't matter.
God.
Oh, God, like,
So
why would you? God does not want you to stay in. Yeah, just God doesn't
so
want you to
here
be in a relationship like that.
here's I mean, okay, so as somebody who is not religious, I don't feel qualified to tell you how you should treat your faith. What I will say is, as a human being, you got to put yourself, and not just yourself, but your family first.
And you
You
know
you
what?
can't keep them in that situation.
And if your own child was in a marriage like that, would you want them to stay? Would you want them to be in the marriage you're in? Because that's the example you're setting. Oh,
So
man. I
I
don't.
mean,
I mean, give her props for even sticking it out this long,
she's
though.
got conviction of faith, and that's fantastic for her. But like, there's only so much you can put up with, right?
Yeah. And honestly,
Like,
I can't imagine if if I had a husband that was a pedophile, I don't like how do you like sleep with them at night? Like I would be disgusted.
nobody would blame her for leaving. Nobody
Well,
would blame her for leaving.
maybe Josh's dad. Maybe Jim Bob.
Yeah, but screw that guy. Jim
Yes.
Bob is, well, that's the name of somebody who would be in that situation. That's all I'm saying. Jim Bob. Um, I might
uh,
be, I might be a little bit too critical about this, but just realistically, regardless of whether or not you believe in God or if you think there are any consequences for your actions in the afterlife, personally, I think once you're gone, you're gone. There's nothing. That does not make it okay to do those things.
hmm
It just doesn't. And if there's no consequences in the afterlife, then realistically, the only ones who can provide those consequences are us. And he's in jail for a reason, and he needs to stay there. So, like, realistically, she has a choice. She's either going to be on her own for the rest of her life, or however long he's in prison, And then when he gets out, she has to worry about whether or not he's going to do these other things. I mean, so let's backtrack a little bit. Back when the, you know, the rules of marriage were first laid down, when you can't get divorced and everything else. Do you know what the consequences were if you actually cheated or did anything like truly unacceptable? They would just kill you. That they would stone you to death, right?
I think that depends on the culture you're talking about.
I maybe it does, but I
You just, I mean, you just didn't get divorced. I mean, the church. Well, I mean, that was the whole thing with King Henry VIII, right? He kept killing his wives because the church wouldn't let him get a divorce.
uh,
I mean, in Islam, you're allowed up to like 4 divorces. So, you
you
know,
got 4 shots, and after that, you're stuck.
I mean, if you can't make it after the fourth try, maybe you shouldn't be married.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, I mean, maybe you're just not meant to be in that kind of relationship.
Yeah. I think that all depends on the culture and the time you're
Yeah,
discussing. I mean, even if you could get divorced, it's usually considered socially unacceptable.
yeah. I
But
don't know, man. That's just so. I do feel like once you get married, you have a duty to be there and to help your partner as much as you are able.
but it goes
And,
both ways.
but it goes both ways. And at a certain point, he clearly doesn't want to get better. He doesn't feel any shame for what he did. He's just his
Well, we
only
don't know
consequence is
that.
being put behind bars.
I mean, we don't know that he could be, going through a whole thing in prison with reevaluating his life and stuff. Now that
Well,
he's not within his
from
father's grasp, right?
from what I understand about prison being what he is, well, he's gonna be reevaluating.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't know what he's going through right now. I mean, I don't think she should stay with him, but that is my
That's
opinion.
fair.
She's going to do what she wants. She's probably never going to hear this podcast, but maybe he'll. I don't know. Maybe Jill does discuss in the book that her dad has Google alerts every time
Yeah,
their
yeah. Oh God,
their
he will
families
see this.
discuss. He might get a Google alert show about our podcast, but
Yeah, he might.
uh,
That would
but
be interesting if he responded.
I doubt it. He probably won't even listen to it.
No, no, he probably won't. I mean, it's not like they're on the air anymore.
That's true. But he might still follow their
Maybe
news. I mean, he's a narcissist, so.
he's a narcissist. Yeah, I think maybe at this, I'm hoping that maybe at this point in his life he's beyond all that and he's just focusing on helping his family.
Mm, I don't know.
That would be the ideal situation.
I hope.
At a certain point you take a step back and you just focus on support. I mean, what else do you have in your life? Like realistically, what else is so important that you have to spend your time doing that you can't help your 19 children and all of your
Oh,
grandkids?
jeez. I
Yeah,
am glad
19
that
children.
I am glad that a lot of his children are like, yeah, we're good with no more than 4 children.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, right? You just gotta.
I'm amazed that woman has been able to have that many children, but I think she had complications the last like one or two of them.
You know what's insane? I've actually met like two or three people who've told me that they actually have 19 kids.
That sounds. I didn't even like being pregnant the first time. I cannot imagine being pregnant
In
with
my
19
first
children.
anthropology class, there was an older gentleman there. He was like, I don't know how old he was. He was like maybe 50, 60 years old, somewhere there. And he's told me that he had 16 kids.
Mm.
16 kids with the same woman,
Oh
mind you.
God. Ugh.
That
Being pregnant sucks.
I've never been. Never
Yeah, you
planned to
don't
be.
want to. I mean, I guess there's some people I think who get like happy hormones when they're pregnant and they really enjoy being pregnant. I was not one of them. It was
uh,
not enjoyable. There was a lot of anxiety and depression. Um,
right.
and a lot of peeing on yourself. So, yeah, don't want to do
Yeah,
that again.
that doesn't sound like a fun time. It doesn't.
I will gladly adopt a child. I will take somebody else's child.
Oh wow, you should be careful how you say
Uh,
that.
I will adopt, so just so I don't have to go through pregnancy again. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. I mean, when we started listening to this book, me and Les I mean, it's only 4 hours long. Um, we, I, oh, go ahead.
It was 4 hours long. What did you listen to it at?
Oh, I listened to it at like point or 1.2. Um, so without
So,
the speed up, I think it's about 4 hours long. And that's not much of a speed up, but I mean, you listened to it in a day. I listened to it in 2 days. We were texting each other back and forth because this book was it just sucks you in, sucks you in.
yeah, but I'm looking at the book right now, and without enhancing the speed at all, it is 7 hours and 7 minutes.
Oh, it is? Oh, I thought it was shorter than that. Okay, I thought it was shorter than that. I looked at my Audible wrong. No, I listened to this in 2 days. Um, I couldn't stop listening to it.
I listened to it the first time. I listened to it in the space of a night. Like I started it over the night and then finished it the next morning.
Yeah, so you got if you haven't already listened, this book I think came out in September. You've give it a read or a listen, either one. Uh, Counting the Cost with Jill Duggar and Derek. I don't know Derek's last name, honestly. It's not Duggar. um, give it a listen. And that's all we have to. I mean, there's lots more for us to say, but we need to wrap this up. We need to wrap this up. We got things to do. You have things to do. So until our next episode, don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, YouTube, Instagram, wherever else we're at. And we look forward to our next episode. Bye. Thank you all for listening. Distribution of Anthropotamus is in collaboration with the American Anthropological Association. Please continue to follow us on Instagram and Twitter @Anthropotamus for our latest episodes, show notes, and book discussion schedule.